Everyone, welcome to the regularly scheduled North College Hill City Council meeting. It is Monday, November 4th and 7 p.m. So we will go ahead and get started, as we always do, by standing for the prayer for council and then the Pledge of Allegiance. God our Father, we are all your servants. We trust in your mercy and love. We trust also in your guidance. Direct the meetings of this council of North College Hill to make good decisions for all the people who live in our city. Give all the members of this council wisdom and insight to know what is best for our city. Help us to be fair and just in all our decisions. Bless us all to do the very best we can with your help and guidance. We pray this in your name. Amen. Amen. Call this meeting to order. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Ms. Sorb. Ms. Gaston.
Here.
Ms. Chichester.
Here.
Ms. Alexander.
Here.
Mr. Wilson.
Present.
Mr. Davis. Ms. Underwood.
Here.
Ms. Zorb did inform me that she would not be here this evening.
Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood.
I move that we excuse Ms. Zorb this evening.
Mr. President,
Ms. Gaston.
I second that.
Motion by Underwood to excuse Ms. Zorb from tonight's meeting with a second by Ms. Gaston. Any discussion? Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Ms. Gaston.
Yes.
Ms. Chichester.
Yes.
Ms. Alexander.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Ms. Underwood.
Yes.
Motion passed 5-0.
Thank you. All right, before we get to the agenda, I do want to take time out, because I'm going to forget if I don't, to thank Clovernook Center for the Blind for allowing us to use this wonderful room here. They've allowed us to use this in the past, so I do really appreciate the staff here for accommodating us. Several people have had to go out of their way to make this happen, and I am grateful for that. So with that, I will move to tonight's agenda.
Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood.
I would move to amend the agenda to allow Ms. Polston to speak after we approve the minutes.
Mr. President,
Ms. Gaston.
I second that.
All right, amend the agenda to allow, sorry. And when did you want that done?
After we approve the minutes.
Okay. All right, that motion to amend the agenda to allow Ms. Polston to speak after the minutes is by Ms. Underwood, second by Ms. Gaston. Any discussion? Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Ms. Gaston.
Yes.
Ms. Chichester.
Yes.
Ms. Alexander.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Ms. Underwood.
Yes.
Motion passed 5-0.
Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood.
I move that we accept the agenda as amended.
Mr. President,
Mr. Wilson.
I second that.
Motion by Ms. Underwood, second by Mr. Wilson to accept tonight's agenda as amended. Any discussion? Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Ms. Gaston.
Yes.
Ms. Chichester.
Yes.
Ms. Alexander.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Ms. Underwood.
Yes.
Motion passed 5-0.
Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood.
I move that we adopt the minutes of the previous meeting from Monday, October 21st, 2024.
Mr. President,
Mr. Wilson.
second that.
Motion by Ms. Underwood. Second by Mr. Wilson to adopt the minutes from the 10/21/24 meeting. Any discussion? Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Ms. Gaston,
Yes.
Ms. Chichester,
Yes.
Ms. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Ms. Underwood.
Yes.
Motion passed 5-0.
All right, I think that brings us up to Ms. Polston. Please.
I will talk fast. I won't take up too much of your time, but I do really appreciate you all having me here tonight. My name is Elizabeth Polston, and I am running for the First District Court of Appeals. I'm running for a judge position. I am currently a assistant prosecuting attorney. I know Erica well. We've had multiple cases together, and she was kind enough to invite me to come and speak to you all tonight. I am a hometown girl. I grew up here, and actually not in North College Hill. I grew up in Forest Park, and I graduated from Winton Woods High School. And then I went to Xavier University, and I went to the University of Akron. I am a zip for law school. And then I came back here to work in the prosecutor's office, where I've been a prosecutor for 14 years. The best part of being a prosecutor is being able to advocate on behalf of people who have been affected by crime. So for the last 14 years, I have been working with people who have been victims of crime. Particularly, I do a lot of sexual assault cases. I do a lot of crimes against children cases. And it has truly been the honor of my life to be able to advocate on behalf of the most vulnerable people in our society. Oh, bless you. So I am looking to run on the First District, looking to take the bench on the First District Court of Appeals, to be a tough judge, but also a very fair judge. I think it's crucial that we have people who have a lot of experience in the courtroom to be on the Court of Appeals, because I see what I've been in the courtroom almost every single day for the past 14 years. I know exactly what should happen in a courtroom and what should not happen in a courtroom. And I would ask for your vote. I'd ask for your help to take that First District bench and make sure that justice is done in Hamilton County. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. And I have some literature if anybody is interested in it, but I really appreciate you letting me talk to you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Polston. Thank you, Ms. Polston.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is communication. Mr. Hedger.
Thanks, Mr. President. I do not have anything at this time.
Thank you. Next is council committees. First, we have City Community Development and Recreation.
Mr. President,
Mr. Wilson.
we didn't have a meeting. Our next meeting will be on November the 12th at 7 p.m.
November the 12th is a Tuesday, correct?
Oh, yes, that's correct.
Am I right on that?
That's
Yeah,
correct.
11th
That's
is,
correct.
yes,
It's 'cause
yeah,
of
the
the
11th is the
holiday.
holiday, yes.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, next is Budget and Finance.
Mr. President, we met on October the 28th. We went over the monthly finance and the 2023 Hinkle report. And the end of the year wrap-up report will be given at the
I'm
next.
sorry, Mr. President, can you talk in the mic?
Yeah.
I can't hear you.
Bring the microphone closer, please.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. You
Won't
can't hear
be
me?
able to hear
Yeah,
it
it's just
through the
right here.
room, but they
Oh,
can hear
okay.
it in TV land.
Sorry, you guys. So we went over, Ms. Anderson gave the 2023 Hinkle report. At the next meeting on November the 20th, we will have the end of the year wrap up. And we will be going over the 2024 Hinkle filing, the 2025 budget allocation, the 2025 salary ordinance, and the 2025 cleanup ordinance. Also, we received the Dunson bench, and we're working with Public Works right now to pick a date so that we can have the ceremony and have it installed and invite the family. And I think that is it for the budget and finance update.
Okay, so you said your next meeting is November 20th. What time?
Yes, it will be a 2-hour meeting because we have a lot to cover. It will be from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next is Rules and Public Policy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rules and Public Policy, the last committee meeting was canceled on the 28th. Our next meeting will be November the 12th at 6 p.m.
Thank you. And Public Safety.
Our last meeting was on October 28th. That meeting was canceled. Our next meeting will be November the 12th at 6:30 p.m.
Thank you. Next up, we have ad hoc reports. If anyone has an ad hoc report to give this evening. Hearing none, we'll move on to the administrative reports. Good evening, Madam Mayor. The floor
Thank
is
you,
yours.
Mr. President. First of all, I would like to give a huge shout out to Ms. Clear and the Recreation Department on the fantastic Harvest Festival. It was really nice. I don't know how many citizens attended, but it was really nice. I was there, and we had about 5 cars for trunk or treat, I believe, maybe 6. So a lot of candy went out as well. So kudos to Ms. Clear for that awesome time. Couple of things that I wanted to discuss. We have a parental ordinance, and I'm not sure what we need to do to start enforcing that. There's been a lot of activity within the community with our youth. Now, I'm an advocate for kids going outside playing instead of being in the house on electronics, but there's been a lot of, I don't want to say issues, but some things that I think that we need to look at this ordinance again to see if it's something that we want to continue and or enforce. I know I've gotten a couple of emails from cities further up north who are interested in that particular ordinance that we have, and they want to see how it's working. I'll just say honestly, I don't think that it is working. I don't know what the issue is or why it's not being enforced. But I do think that we need, since it's a piece of legislation that we initiated and that we put out, we probably need to revisit it to see if it's something that we want to continue or have our police officers enforce. I can pull it up, look at it. I'm not sure if it's in your, I know we talked about it before, but I'm not sure. I know we've had some issues where we couldn't meet. If you guys had talked to it and I missed a meeting or two, talked about it, I'm sorry.
Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood.
Madam Mayor, do you know the section offhand, or I can look it up, but
I do not know the section offhand, but there was a whole ordinance that when,
I recall.
okay.
Okay.
So that's just one of the things I want to talk. And another thing that's been a nuisance is the amount of litter. I know we have the sign. I can't remember what the phrase says, but we need to work on enforcement as well of our litter laws if we have them. If not, we need to work on getting some and make sure that they are in line with what we can charge. I think the enforcement is the issue. I know it's hard to enforce. I can scream all day out my window, don't throw that on the ground, but that's not enforcement, you know. And lastly, I just want to encourage everyone to get out to vote tomorrow. No matter who you vote for, even if you don't vote, grab that ballot. It'll count as something, I'm sure. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions for the mayor? All right, next up is the city administrator's report. Good evening, Ms. Chamberlain.
Good evening, and bear with me. I'm not feeling great, but I'm trying. The first update I wanted to give, I have spoken to Rumpke. I'm setting up a meeting with them. It turns out we do have an extension that we can exercise, one last extension on that contract. That's good because I had met with our prior budget and finance chair, Ms. Dukestein, about and with Center for Local Government about joining the joint bidding process for next year, which would allow us to jointly bid with other cities, which drives down the cost. And I've personally done that with other cities, and it's been extremely effective and saved households quite a bit of money. I've worked on drafting potential organizational charts. That was something the mayor and I had discussed. I've been reviewing our personnel policies, and I've started redlining those. I've been working with Jeanette. She's been doing a fantastic job. Jeanette has been trying to identify where our issues have been with accounting, and maybe we need to move into better best practices. So we had a talk, and we were talking about how it takes about 6 months to a year to identify all the issues, and then another 6 months to a year to fix those. So please continue to be patient with administration. This is not something she can do overnight. This does take time, and with that, it creates some obstacles for both of us as we're trying to ascertain how to fill out reports that are going to state, that we have to fill out any kind of auditing for specific projects or funding. So just please be patient. She's working very hard, and I'm trying to offer support on the back end. We have received, I think, the final bids that were going to be used for repairing the roof at the police department, and there's also mitigation of a small hazardous material issue within the building. So that's being taken care of, and I'd like to thank Public Works for their efficiency with getting that taken care of. And once again, thank you for the Harvest Festival to Miss Clear for her execution of that event. And I do apologize for sounding so scattered. My head hurts.
Mr. President,
Thank you. Ms. Underwood?
I have a question for you, Ms. Chamberlain.
Yes.
How's it coming with the generator? I'm probably going to bug you guys until they get a generator over there.
No, they need to get a generator. We actually need 2 generators because we need one at the senior center too for a Plan B location. That is 2 issues when I get through with the budget, need to call our Office of Homeland Security and see where they're at with any kind of emergency funding for that. And then if there's not funding that way, we're going to look into the other sources. But I was trying to get finished with the budget, which should be done tomorrow afternoon.
Okay, so what is our timeline?
The timeline, if we can obtain funding, I would assume maybe 6 weeks to 10 weeks, depending on how quickly they're issuing money. And I don't know if they're putting out funds. Normally after some kind of natural disaster event like what we had, that's when they put those funds out. I haven't received anything personally, but I also realized last week that I've not actually been the one well, actually, I don't know if anybody has been receiving emails that used to go to the prior city administrators. So I've kind of been lacking on communication coming from the state, which I think we have fixed as of last Wednesday.
Okay, so assuming, and I understand about, we definitely want to seek the grant funding if that's available, but I am mindful that, I want to just make sure that they have what they need over there.
Yes.
So do we know about how much it's going to cost? Have we priced them? Is there something we can do to kind of?
I think that, so I had asked them after that weekend to go ahead and start looking at what would be needed in different options. Now, I don't have those with me, and I don't want to misquote anybody. I know, personally speaking, I've purchased generators for different buildings, and it's been anywhere from 30 to 50, depending on the size of the building. Those numbers might have changed, too, because that's been probably 4 years since I've done that. But I can ask them to send that out to you if you'd like, any updates. But I know that I'm pretty sure they had those picked out fairly quickly.
Okay, all right, fair
Everybody was eager to get that taken care of.
enough. Okay, thank you.
Mr. President,
Ms. Alexander?
I'm Ms. Chamberlain. Had a question about the Rumpke. You said we can get an extension. Was our contract up? Can you give me a little background?
Our contract was up, and technically speaking, we should have probably, so normally you want to start talking about this like 6 to 8 months out. And our contract, when I started with the city, the mayor and I were looking through stuff, and we discovered our contract was going to be up at the end of this year. I couldn't find a copy of our contract. There have been some documents I think that maybe had some damage, Mayor, from the 1500 building. So with that, I was having issues contacting Rumpke. I finally did make contact, and they've been very helpful. And it turned out that we did have one last extension on our contract. So that was already there, and that was already available for us to exercise, and that has just that was kind of like a blessing, I think, for us, because otherwise we would have maybe potentially had to negotiate with very little time. And I'd say cost probably would have went up quite a bit.
And how long, you said this potential bidding with other cities, how long does that usually take? And
That process will probably take from start to finish. So if it's at the end of 2025, without actually having a timeline in front of me, my assumption is they probably get started around May or June. There's normally a conversation between the cities that are participating, and then they put it out to bid. And then, generally speaking, each city has their own kind of cafeteria plan that they get to pull from. So you're not stuck doing the same thing that every city is doing, because some cities want twice a week pickups. Some cities want pickups every single day if they produce a large amount of trash. So you'll have the ability to kind of negotiate those terms. I would say all in all, you would have a contract in place by October 1st, starting, that would take effect on January 1st of 26.
okay, so you said 2025 is when
Yes.
the bidding, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chamberlain.
Yes.
Next up is the Law Director's Report. Mr. Dieters.
Mr. President, I just have a couple things. I know that there's a lot of new people on council, and probably it's worthwhile to do a little bit of a reminder. And that way I can at least say something and act like I'm doing something at these meetings. I never get to say anything typically. But one of the things I'm a little concerned about is issues regarding public records and issues regarding public meetings. I want to make sure that everybody's very clear that, first of all, my advice in the past has been do not text any city business on your phones, because those texts are public records and they can be subject to a review and to request by the public. And a lot of times people don't necessarily preserve their text messages the way they may need to be. So it'd be fine to say, for me to text Mike and say, Mike, can you call me tomorrow? I need to talk to you about something. That's fine. There's nothing in there that would be public record. That's not public record that I did that, because it doesn't document the organization's functions and decisions and policies. But if that text message had content as to something, then I think that's problematic. Now, it's not against the law, but it's problematic because then you have a duty to maintain all those text messages. And if you don't wish to maintain those, it's probably not a good idea to text. So if you need to put something in writing, I would prefer that you do it in email, because our emails are saved, they are preserved. Even if you take them off your computer, they're still saved in our cache. The other thing that is sometimes problematic as well is the reply all button. You should lose the reply all button on any time you have an email that's involved with the city, especially if it's council people. So if Victor would send an email to Brandon and to all of you, right? Let's say he sent it to all of you, and then Brandon responds back to Victor and says reply all, and then Mike chimes in and says this is what I think, and then Erica chimes in and says this is what I think. What you just did is you had a meeting in cyberspace, and that's not allowed either. So it's something that's very common that elected officials do, because today our world is email world and text world. But you really need to refrain from it. It is okay to send an email out to all your colleagues and say, I am going to bring an issue to council next Tuesday, and this is what it's going to be. If you as a council person would choose to respond to that email, you should just respond directly to the person who sent you the email, not reply all. Because that reply all then basically means that you've had a discussion that has occurred. And you're not allowed to have those discussions, and particularly you wouldn't want to have those discussions and have evidence of the discussion on an email to show that you did have the discussion. So it's just not prudent to use the reply all button in that case for those reasons. So I wish we could actually just get it off your computers, for your city computers, but we can't. And it's a habit. I understand it's a habit that you see. You see there's 4 people on the email, and sort of the habit is you hit reply all, but you really have to be disciplined not to do that. So I'm happy to answer any questions on it, but I realize we haven't talked about that in a long time. It's been about a year since we had that discussion. There's a lot of new people on, and just want to make sure that happens to be the case. I happen to see an email to me that there were multiple city people on, and someone hit reply all, and that's kind of what sparked the interest to say, well, I probably need to make sure that we do that for everybody. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. But remember, it doesn't matter what device it's on. It can be on your personal device, your personal computer. But if it discusses city business, then it would be determined to be a record that could therefore be a public record. And you might have an obligation not only to maintain it, but to disclose it as well. So.
Thank you, Mr. Dieters.
Okay, thank you. That's all I got, though.
Any questions? All right, next up, we have the Finance Director's report. She is not with us this evening, and we did add the Rec Director report.
She is.
Oh, she is. I'm sorry. I apologize, Ms. Anderson.
Hiding back there.
She been sitting in the back of the room all day. No, she just
Let the record show. Ms. Anderson is in the back of the room, and I missed that completely. But she does not have a report, so it'll all work out. Thank you. We did add the Recreation Director this evening, but she had a presentation she wanted to give, and we couldn't do that in this room. So she's going to do that at a future meeting. So that'll bring us to call of members, starting with Ms. Gaston.
Hello, everyone. First, I want to say I'm happy to be here, but I also wanted to point out that I attended the Fall Festival, and it was awesome. So congratulations to Ms. Claire for putting that together. I had the great opportunity to see the new fire engine. Not only is it shiny, but it has everything that they said that they needed. So I was able to sit inside and play with it. So I'm very proud that our city has something that's reliable that everyone's really excited about. It was a joy to see all the children having fun and getting their candies and being on the rides. It was awesome. It was a joy to see the community come together. And so that's it.
Thank you. Next up, Ms. Chichester.
I just wanted to thank Ms. Claire again as well. We had fun time setting up the Harvest Festival. We were out there at 9 this morning watching them put the tent up. I'm going to post some of that video on social media. It was really great time-lapse video watching it come up. Also, thank you, Ms. Anderson, for all the hard work you've been putting into for the end of the year reports. And make sure everybody get out and vote tomorrow. So I'll be out there in the senior center. So please bring me a cup of coffee. I'm there a long time. Joking, just kidding. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Ms. Alexander.
I attended the Harvest Festival too.
Yeah.
And yeah, the truck was so cool. I got a picture in it and modeled like Vanna White with the 78 next to it and everything. My kids jumped into it. I got to walk around and talked about the new amenities. And I would like to take the time to thank all the vendors and the volunteers, Ms. Clear, Public Works, and all the citizens. It was really cool seeing all the little costumes. I didn't do the trunk or treat. I just walked around with a bag and was like, hey, here's some candy, here's some candy. I thought it was very well organized. It was great weather, had the DJ pumping. Like I said, I just really appreciated the whole event, and I just want to encourage everyone to get out and vote as well.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
As usual, thank you to everybody that works for NCH. I mean, it's truly appreciative of your time that you give up to North College Hill. You know, I greatly appreciate it if nobody else does. I want to say that I skipped the Harvest Festival this year. I'll admit it. I skipped it. Yeah, I skipped. And other than that, everyone have a good evening.
Thank you. Mr. Davis.
I'd like to piggyback on everybody. While I was unable to attend, my nieces and nephews attended, and they're still eating candy from the trunk or treat about a week and change later. And also, as I like to say again, Motion NCH, that's the kickoff for the founding of the North College Hill Neighborhood Association. That meeting, once again, that is November 14th, 6 p.m., Greater Grace Christian Ministries Incorporated, 6717 Hamilton Avenue. Once again, 1114 Greater Grace Christian Ministries, 6717 Hamilton Avenue. And also, we've got a survey floating around for people in order to gauge interest, or just in case you're unable to make that initial meeting. That survey is floating around, just trying to gauge our interest in everything. Thank you. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you. And Ms. Underwood.
Thank you, you, Mr. President. I too want to thank the Recreation Director for organizing the Fall Festival and thank all the volunteers who took part in that. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend, but I heard a lot about it. I saw the pictures on social media and saw the pictures of that beautiful fire truck where I was there at the beginning, so very happy about that. And what I would like to just tell everybody is that I just want to make sure you just go vote. I don't care who you vote for, you know, just go vote. I think it's just super important that people vote, even if you just go and you don't know anybody, you just pick one race or whatever, just go vote. But if anybody's interested, I hesitate to do this, but if anybody's interested, if you send me an email, I will walk you through printing your sample ballot based on your address so that you know what your ballot looks like before you walk in there, because our neighborhood, North College Hill, not all of the citizens have the same ballot. So it's very important that you go vote. That's all I got.
Shout out to Hamilton County. Their website actually is the easiest in the area for getting your sample ballot from, so.
Awesome.
All right,
Mr. President, I had a question for.
go
Mr.
ahead, Madam Mayor.
Davis. You said that there's a survey floating around. Where might that survey be?
Be aside from, let's see, yeah, Facebook, Andrea Brooks with the Planning Commission, former Councilwoman Donna Williams, Donna Brunner. I apologize. And if you shoot me an email, I would say text me, but apparently that's frowned upon. But anybody who needs the survey, I can get it to you. I'm just not always 100% sure exactly how I'm allowed to disseminate such things.
It's a digital survey?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. That'll bring us up to remarks from the audience. Mr. Hedger, we have anyone signed in?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, we have Kathy Curitan.
Good evening. I'm presuming. Is there any? Thank you. Good evening, Kathy Curitan, 6718 Devonwood Drive. Mr. Dieters, thank you. Thank you for please don't start the timer. Thank you for preserving our city and what's in the best interest of our administration and council. Mr. Graver, go ahead. You probably already did. All right, so a few questions, and the process will be, if permissible, I will pose the question and then I will take my seat and ask for you to respond. I'll start with you, Ms. Chamberlain, and good evening to you. I hope you feel better after this evening. So first question for you is, have you discussed with council or administration regarding having the community forum regarding the city center and the input on what the citizens would like? Additionally, have you spoken with our police and fire to create a crisis response plan in the event anything were to ever happen again in our city as it did during the hurricane? Additionally, can you give us an update? I think I heard you say that you had some bids regarding the city center, so can you provide that information as well? And then finally, for you, Ms. Chamberlain, can you talk about the CDBG funds allocation and the update on that? Okay, next I have a question this might also be for you, Ms. Chamberlain. And again, Mr. Dieters, thank you for doing what's in the best interest of our city. I believe that, again, we have had significant growth on council, but I don't think any council members have been trained on the proper onboarding process. And I probably, if they would have been trained, they probably wouldn't have had the errors that have been present. So is there a council onboarding process? And if so, has all council members who've been recently appointed or elected in the last, let's just say 1 year, gone through that process? Okay, now the next question I have is for you, Ms. Underwood. I believe it was advised, and you can clarify, if the comprehensive plan is in your committee, and if so, when will it be reviewed and discussed amongst the council? Also, I'm so sorry, Ms. Chamberlain, another one for you. You mentioned this evening that it takes about 6 months to identify an issue and then another 6 months to fix it. Have there been any issues identified since you've begun to work with Ms. Anderson to clarify our finances. This is also, again, I'm so sorry, Ms. Chamberlain, another question for you.
30 seconds.
Yes, sir. Who is contacting the DAV and the Historical Society? They've stopped coming to our meetings. They were faithful. They've contributed significantly to our city, but they're absent. And I'm sure I know why. But who is in communication with the DAV and Historical Society about where they will host their meetings? And then lastly, are there any, this is for you, Mr. Dieters, and for you, Ms. Chamberlain, are there any unanswered and unresolved record requests as of today, November the 4th? Thank you.
Mr. President, if I may.
Ms. Chamberlain.
Ms. Curitan, the community forum, I just spoke with Ms. Brooks about the Planning Commission being invited. We picked a date as of Thursday or Friday last week. I believe the date we settled was Tuesday the 19th, but I need to confirm that to make sure because we were looking at two different dates. We were going to be finalizing the plans for that event and then putting out a public notice for it. And we would be engaging. It's a planning charrette. It'd be 2 hours. It'd be a very kind of pared down one. Once again, taking the ideas in the comprehensive plan. Now we're hyper focusing them on the 1,500 building per Mr. Wilson's request. This, I think, is a great exercise for the community to kind of get everybody on one page and one idea of what we want. And the question you had regarding, let's see, the city center, I think it was the third question you had. I was talking about bids for the police department. So that was just, we have 3 buildings that needed roof work. So that one building is done or is getting done, and then we also have the senior center building or roof that's being looked at right now too. Your second question, crisis response plan. Yes, we have talked about this. I have directed them to the different department heads to Hamilton County to look and see what they have as the countywide hazard mitigation plan or emergency response plan. And then as far as a full crisis response plan for the city, I'm trying to get through the budget first, but they have been directed towards what those plans look like so we can start that process when this is finished. Bids for City Center, yes, that CDBG funds allocation. So the update we received from that, it is correct that if we want to use them for a different use, council will have to determine that, and we have to go back through the whole process. So this does take up time. I think I gave an update about this at the last meeting, maybe, but just to kind of go back over it. The reason that we have the public engagement or public comment period for CDBG funds is not to just use them. Normally, there's 2 different comment periods you have, and then you also have one at closeout. The second one is for the actual use of funds. So the first one's like, hey, we want to get these funds for a project, but then once they're awarded, the public has the ability to say whether or not they're okay with the city using the community development block grant funds for that purpose. So if we change the purpose, we do have to go back through that process, including the advertisement dates and the time frame. The county, we spoke, these funds do need to be what we call substantial completion needs to occur by July 1st or June 30th, I guess. I am writing a management letter that's going to the county. This management letter will go into the electronic filing system that they have that kind of works with HUD. HUD is who has CDBG funds. If that's not clear, if you have questions about that, let me know. But the system will flag different things. So us not having spent down all of our funds by probably March or April would normally flag HUD. But hopefully with this letter on file, that will let them know that we had some change in administration as far as in-house, and then also with some of our representation, which has led to a small delay, but we're working on it. We will be at substantial completion. So we have to make decisions quickly, but it is completely feasible to get this spent and taken care of appropriately. Onboarding for council members. I will let Mr. Dieters chime in after me, but I believe the state has a local officials training that occurs after you all are elected into office. Because of the turnover that we've had, that's one of the unfortunate things that happens in multiple states. If that training is not something that's there and always available, it's kind of difficult to get them trained. That's something that I personally don't have the time to do all of it. I can always take people through a budget and finance workshop that's kind of like the basic 101 for newly elected officials. Otherwise, Mr. Dieters, I don't know if you have something or if you know of like a resource somewhere that we can provide, because I will say I'm sorry that I did not do that. I met with Ms. Chichester for probably 15 minutes, and that's a failure, and I apologize.
The only thing I know, the auditor's office has a open meetings, open records training that they put on periodically that you can get from the auditor's website. That's the only thing I don't know.
Is there like a video that they can watch? Oh, okay.
Mr.
I can try to
President.
find.
Mr. President,
Oh, I was going to say, but I'll let Ms. Underwood go. She'll
there
probably say.
actually is a newly elected officials training that occurs in Columbus, but I believe it only occurs once a year.
It's usually in
So,
January.
Yeah.
So it's something we have to, I know that several of us did attend that a few years ago, but I know that it exists. I just, it's kind of off of my radar, but I'm happy to look. If anyone's interested, I'm happy to look to figure out when the next one is so that we can kind of coordinate.
Mr. President, I just wanted to say that that's something that's not normally done from the administrative standpoint. It's typically done that way. So when you're elected, the Board of Election sends off your name and they send you something in your mail. So we wouldn't have that information. The onboarding that we do only deals with pay, like their actual pay that they would get from the city. But as far as any training, we don't do any of that. That's up to that individual if they take it. Now, if it's mandatory, I don't believe it is. I don't believe it is.
Ms. Keratin, you had asked about the finances. So, and to be clear, I said 6 months to 1 year to identify, not just 6 months. And that's key because also keep in mind that when Ms. Anderson first joined us, there was nobody in my role. And there is something to be said for she's dealing with day-to-day finances and I'm dealing with that micro level or macro level of financial management. So there were some kind of gaps in what she could look at from there. We've made a lot of strides since I've been there. I feel like we've been discussing kind of where it's not that we have issues. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing nefarious. There is potential for far better practices and how we do this. It will result in cost savings. It will result in better understood current state of our finances. It will result in better management of our projects and our especially our federal and state funded projects. These are things that nothing has been done wrong from what I can see.
Because you use the word issues. And
Yes, and when issues means basically that there are questions that remain because some things were accounted for in such a way that it is not what we consider best practice. It's not up to date and it's left gaps. So nothing is wrong, but there's issues, meaning we need to update and kind of bring us into best practices and more easily understood accounting. Our accounting practices just haven't been consistent, and they've had some kind of flawed manners of how we identify like different transactions, I think would be the best way to describe it. So as we get consistency with transactions, it's a lot easier to see what we're doing. And then I do not know who is contacting the DAV and Historical Society. I don't know who was supposed to be responsible for that. Nobody mentioned it to me, so I wasn't.
Mr. President, I
Madam
will
Mayor.
say that the Historical Society has a continual meeting. They meet at the Senior Center. I cannot remember which Saturday, but I believe it was the Saturday of the Fall Festival that they were there, if I'm not mistaken.
And then your last question, unanswered or unresolved public records request. I will let Mr. Dieters respond to that.
We have public records requests that we're still working on, but I couldn't tell you. I don't have a list of them in front of me.
I know that we've responded to everything. I don't know if we have fulfilled everything. Some things we knew would take longer to fulfill. There was no way with staffing that we could fulfill those within 1 week. Like, I'm reviewing like thousands of emails. Whenever an employee leaves and we have their emails archived, we can't do a search function. So I just have to read each email, see if it has anything to do with the request, especially when it's a very broad request that spans months upon months or years upon years. And then if it does have something that pertains to the question, I then have to make sure there's nothing that needs to be redacted. If there is, I have to redact it. It's just a very long-term process, and literally thousands of emails are what was requested.
That number, how many, if you can, approximately, say 5, 3, 20, how many unanswered and whether not unanswered, unresolved? Well, if I think so.
Exact number, I know that
Approximately.
I'm working on one, Fire's working on one,
I wouldn't even venture a guess. I don't know.
maybe 4.
Okay, thank you.
You're looking at me.
Ms. Underwood, she asked about
The comprehensive
Yes.
plan. So what I need everybody out in TV land to understand about the comprehensive plan is that it is detailed, extremely detailed. It is a roadmap. So, for example, one of the things in the comprehensive plan, because I'm familiar with it, I've read it several times, is they have some recommendations about us working with Metro and how Metro kind of operates within the city of North College Hill. Now, we can talk about that for 2 hours. My meeting is 30 minutes. So, is the comprehensive plan on my agenda? Yes. But will we get through 145 pages? No, it's not going to happen. You know, so we will have to take it in bits and pieces and chunks. There will have to be things that will be delegated. We will have to figure out how we want to, what's the most important thing? What can we do right this minute? What can we, work on long term? All of those things. So, is it in my committee? Yes. But then so is the parental ordinance, and so are several other things, apparently onboarding for new council members. So it's a 30-minute meeting. I try to be as efficient as possible. I try to respect everybody's time. I don't go over into other meetings, and I don't like special meetings. I hate them, as a matter of fact, with the passion of 1,000 burning suns. I know I say that a lot, but I do. So I am not going to schedule a special meeting unless I absolutely have to. We will, it is in my agenda. We will discuss it, but it will be in bits and pieces and parts, and that's how we will address it.
And per your delegation, there are opportunities we can probably move some things into city community development, recreation, but we wanted to start in one place and not be too scattered, so.
That's fine. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes, Ms. Chichester.
I wanted to address Ms. Dukestein's question about the onboarding training, me being the newest member. Ms. Curitan, I'm sorry, what did I say? Dukestein. Her head popped out from behind you. Ms. Curitan, I am newest member, and I think I confirmed with Ms. Gastins that I have the Ohio Ethics and the Sunshine Laws training to complete. So that is part of my onboarding as well right now currently. So, thank you.
I will pass along that, Mr. President, I apologize. I will pass along the information about the newly elected officials training that occurs once a year, because I believe the city pays for that for you, for us, I think. So, I will give you the information on that, and, so you guys can go to that, because I think that is a more it's an all-day thing, and it just kind of goes over a lot of really good information about maybe what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do, what we shouldn't do, even though we might be allowed. I thought it was a really good training to have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hedger, we have anyone else?
No.
Okay, that will move us to legislation, and tonight we have no legislation. So we'll move to further remarks from the audience as it pertains to legislation. But as we have no legislation, there are no remarks, so we'll move to old business. Anyone have old business? Hearing none, we'll move to new business. Anyone have new business?
Mr. President,
Mr. Wilson.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Wilson to adjourn,
Mr. President, I second that.
seconded by Ms. Underwood. Motion to adjourn by Mr. Wilson, seconded by Mr. Underwood. Any discussion? All right, before we call the roll on that, one last reminder, tomorrow is Election Day. If you have not voted, go vote tomorrow. Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Ms. Gaston.
Yes.
Ms. Chichester.
Yes.
Ms. Alexander.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Ms. Underwood.
Yes.
Motion passed 5-0.
This meeting is adjourned.